Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I know I'm a little bit late on this, but I actually finished watching the third season of 13 Reasons Why, and I had a lot to say about it. And although the show aired the 23rd of August, I actually wanted to give my full in-depth opinion of each character and the show itself. And it took me a while to finish watching the entire series, which is why I don't really like hour-long shows, especially when I need to binge watch them, but I finally finished. So the first character I'm going to talk about is Ani. Now, I have seen a lot about Ani, and a lot of the comments about Ani were mostly negative. A lot of people really did not like Ani. A lot of people were annoyed by Ani. A lot of people literally hated on Ani, even the actress who played her, and I'm going to get into that later. Look, I personally felt that her character and her being there was definitely a jump the shark, move. It was definitely an out of nowhere kind of thing. They definitely just placed her there out of nowhere, so I felt like her character was definitely somewhat unnecessary, because where did she come from? There was not too much of a full backstory or a leading up of, who she was or where she came from or why she's there. So I definitely feel like this move was a definite jump the shark. Yes, I definitely feel what other people are feeling. Like, she was definitely unnecessarily there for the most part, and I feel like they just kind of placed her out of nowhere. Now, granted, if you really think about it, Ani may not be the most necessary or most important character, but she kind of does play a critical role there, where she not only is narrating, but she basically is the person that's kind of on the outside looking in, where she is that person on the inside. She's living with Bryce, she gets to see Bryce in a different light than other people see him. And in a way, she kind of is the audience, or at least the people who have a soft spot for Bryce. So everybody at Liberty thinks Bryce is this horrible monster because of what he has done and what he has done to other girls. But she looks at him and says, I don't see that in Bryce. Or, I don't understand what you guys are saying. I've actually spent some time with him, and I've kind of seen the way he acts, and I just feel like he's a lost soul, or he's been through a lot, or, there's something about him that is not what or how people say. And it kind of goes to show that who we may think is a monster, or who we may think is horrible, someone else may think has a good side to them, and they focus solely or mostly on that. And even so, we saw throughout this season that Bryce was trying to change, and I'm going to get into that later. So we see that Ani isn't completely unnecessary, but I do agree that she was definitely jumped the shark. And outside of her character, the actress who plays Ani, I forgot her name, the actress who plays Ani was subjected to a lot of bullying on social media, to the point where she literally privated her Twitter and deleted her Instagram. And honestly, what I find funny and so ironic is that, one, I heard this from Camille's Corner, that you're just watching a show about bullying and the effects of bullying and assault and a lot of things that cause people to, take their own lives, or basically, just wallow in depression. You watch a show about pretty much the effects of bullying, and yet you are doing the same thing. Like, look, I understand that sometimes we watch these TV shows and we get so ingrained and captivated by the actors or the actresses who play certain characters that we kind of get, we kind of really take the characters and make them real in our eyes. We don't always know how to differentiate the characters from the real, from the actors who play them. And I understand that means you're probably that good of an actor or an actress if you can do that. However, from what I've heard on Camille's Corner, they were saying a whole bunch of racist stuff to her. They were saying a whole bunch of nasty, disgusting stuff to her. And to be honest, here's what I believe. I believe they wanted to be racist towards her. I believe these same people who are racist trolls, or even who are not just trolls, but saying racist stuff to her because they simply did not like her character, I personally believe that they always felt this way. They all wanted to say some racist stuff to her, but they needed a reason or an excuse to do that. They did the same thing with Normani. Normani said something about Camila Cabello she said something about her saying that, oh, she's quirky. She didn't say anything intense. She didn't say anything mean, but people took it too far. And I definitely believe that these people who said some racist stuff towards Normani and towards this actress, they've been wanting to say that for the longest time. They've been feeling that way, but they feel like now they have some sort of green light to do it, because Ani's character is widely, hated and widely, disagreeable. A lot of people don't understand why she's there. A lot of them hated Ani, and some even low-key hope that she was the killer. So I personally feel like these people intended to be racist towards her. They just needed a reason in their eyes. So it was much of an easy target because she was hated as a character, so let's take it out on the actress. And personally, I find it funny because I know that other actors on this show were definitely subjected to some of those trolling, like the guy who played Monty, Timothy Granaderos, and, Justin Prentice, who plays Bryce. They were definitely subjected to some trolling because that's how good of an actor you must be, where people hate your character so much they don't know how to differentiate, okay? But that's the thing. They were subjected to some type of trolling, I've heard in interviews that they've said, but I guarantee you it wasn't to this extent. I personally feel like these people just wanted to be racist towards this girl, but they needed, in their eyes, a reason. So Ani is basically that character that watches and lurks and observes, and, she's basically a different set of the audience who basically gets to see a more humanized side of Bryce. And, of course, I'm going to get into the Bryce character later. But I do feel like she had some bad parts of her character where, she's flip-flopping between like Bryce and Clay. And I felt like Clay was trying to be a little bit possessive over her, but I'll get into that later, of course. But I do think that, those were the flaws in her character. But then again, she was kind of just thrown in there and put in there. So I can't necessarily blame people for not liking her character. The next character I'm going to talk about is Jessica, and honestly, I feel like Jessica, her character was more like a journey for me, where, you got to see her improve, you got to see her take over as student body president, you got to see her, basically become more of an activist, and of course, her going through what she went through makes this and of course, her going through what she went through kind of makes that make sense a little bit. You do have a lot of people who go through a traumatic experience or are more likely prone to go through a traumatic experience, have to stand up. So I like her. And I feel like, her confronting Bryce was her anger talking. And I also feel like her basically starting the whole hands-off/hoe movement, honestly, it's clearly another feminist group, okay? And I was here for it in terms of the whole, it was more like a mini #MeToo situation that was put on the school campus. So I personally think that was something really good. It was a really good way to make a reference to that. And of course they named it hoe. It's like, yeah, we're reclaiming the word because, you have the whole slut walk thing, and then you have hoe, which stands for hands off, but you combine them into an acronym and you take back the word, which is, kind of clever. And you also saw Jessica struggle with her relationships, especially with Alex and with Justin. How do you go back to the guy who let you get raped? Because on the outside looking in, you're like, how dare you do this? You betrayed your whole movement. You betrayed our cause, and you betrayed all the other girls who were like rooting for you. And, looking at Jessica's story, you would think, oh, okay, well, on the outside looking in, yeah, I would be offended. You let the guy who let you get raped and you go back to him. That's sounding like a little bit of a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing. Almost, you know what I'm saying? But I do think it was great that Jessica got to see some closure, and it's great to see that, Bryce apologized, and I'm going to get into Bryce later. And it's great to see that, she is slowly but surely taking charge of her body, taking charge of her sexuality, and she's trying to take her power back, which is so great. So the next character I want to talk about is Justin. So Justin. Honestly, after the last episode of season 2, when we saw him shoot the heroin between his toes, I was like, come on! I was here for you. And even in this season, when you think Justin is going to get clean, like he keeps relapsing. And I understand. I think this also touches his story, I believe, touches on the struggles of recovery. You know, you're addicted to drugs, and look, I have never been through a situation like that, but we always hear the stories about how people have a hard time like staying clean sometimes because a relapse can happen. And he kept relapsing. And I'm not saying recovery is necessarily easy, but I'm like, cue the Tyra Banks meme. I'm like, I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you? Like every time I wanted Justin to get clean and I felt Justin was on the right path, he lets me down. And I'm not necessarily blaming him because I'm not saying I know how hard recovery is, but I'm not saying it's an easy process. But we just want Justin, or at least I want Justin to get clean once and for all. Hell, Clay's family adopted you and you're bringing drugs into their house. Like, come on now. The most shocking thing I found out about Justin this season was about his child sexual abuse, okay? I was very shocked to see that when they were in the auditorium and I saw especially more boys stand up. But when Justin stood up, I was like, that same look that Jessica had on her face, I had the same look on my face. Like, what, Justin? What happened? How are you a survivor? I want to know this story. And then he talks about how he was a child and his drug addicted mother, she had a boyfriend who she would get high with, but while she was knocked out, the boyfriend would sneak into his room and start touching him and whatnot. And then he started leaving the house. When he left the house, he started prostituting himself to other guys. And honestly, believe it or not, that stuff does happen, especially in, like, let's be real, in poor areas, in drug addicted people, and in people who are LGBTQ. You have like trans teens and trans people who either were kicked out of their house, left their homes, and were on the street, and their way to survive, they had to resort to prostituting. I heard like the Pier in New York City, that was a well-known place for people to go and like prostitute themselves, like especially people who are LGBTQ, and that people go and prostitute themselves. So, you know, people do it for drugs, people do it for money because they're on the street. And, you know, in season 2, when we saw Justin on the street with that cup like on a piece of cardboard, I'm like, damn, it's that bad? But believe it or not, stuff like this does happen. You have runaway teens, or you have teens who don't have a home or who are kicked out of their house for whatever reason. They have to resort to begging on the street or even prostitution. So his story is really not far from a true story or someone's true story. But that was shocking to find out. That really, I did not see that coming. Now, the next person I want to talk about is Tony. His situation about his parents being taken away by ICE. He comes home. He was going to bring his boyfriend Caleb over to his home to meet his family. And you know what? It was kind of beautiful and very, 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 very telling about how his family was very, you know, tolerant and accepting and still loved their son the same way, even though he was gay. And I'm not saying necessarily being gay is a bad thing, because it isn't. You know, love who you want to love, be with who you want to be with, do what you want to do. And this is coming from a person who likes both genders, okay? Now, granted, I love the fact, because we often don't see that in communities of color. You know, in communities of color, especially my background, I come from a Caribbean background, and, you know, it's very homophobic. But at the same time, it's great to see, you know, especially people in communities of color who are at least very respectful. You know, if you can say, if you don't accept the lifestyle, that is fine, but at the same time, be respectful. The parents would say, hey, you're my son, I love you that much. So I loved hearing Tony's story about how his dad was just like, hey, I love you either way. I was like, however, his situation was very unique, and it really touched on another trending topic, which is immigration and ICE, and how you see a lot of people either being contained at the border or ICE raids happening where people are being separated from their families, because he comes home with his boyfriend to bring his boyfriend to meet his family, and, you know, his family's like very excited to see him, you know, is very like saying, oh, so this is the guy. And he notices that everything is set up and the stove is still on. So you see the abruptness of how your family can be literally stripped away from you and taken from you And it really definitely touches on the subject of ICE and, immigration and how that affects people who, are young, and what are they supposed to do? And I remember him calling his family and he's saying, "Oh, they're all the way at this border on like the other side of town or the other side of the country or something." So I understand that there are people who are watching this who's saying that, "Yep, I've been through that," or "Yes, I know people who are going through that," or "Yes, we know that this is happening." So, man, I'm praying for Tony too. And the fact that Bryce talked to his mother and said, "Yep, it was my father who did it because he wanted to keep shut, or you wanted you to keep shut, or threatened you about the whole trial thing." So it kind of goes to show, especially what people who are ruthless and have money will do. Now, the next person I want to talk about is Clay. I felt like I should have saved the best for last, but I really have the best for last. But honestly, when I first saw not only the trailer, but when I watched this show, I had a strong feeling that Clay was definitely going to be a prime suspect in this, because Clay was pretty much the face of trying to fix everything. Remember, he went to Bryce's house in season 2 and tried to beat him up and he got his ass beat. Remember that? So I honestly knew that Clay would be considered a prime suspect in all of this. I had no doubt in my mind that they would try to think that, "Oh, it was Clay. Clay did it. Clay had more motive to do it. You came after Bryce, especially what he did to Hannah and Jessica and whatnot. You had to, must have done it. You have clear motives, especially when you sent the threatening text like, 'I'll kill you' and whatnot." So I had a feeling that Clay would be considered a prime suspect, but I knew in my heart of hearts Clay didn't do it. Now, his relationship with Ani, I feel like Clay was definitely treating Ani like another Hannah. Like, he liked Hannah, he realized he loved Hannah, and he was so sorry about, letting her go. And he said, "Oh, I let you go, Hannah." And I feel like because of what Bryce did, not only to Hannah, but to Jessica and a lot of other girls and some people he cared about, he just wanted to keep Ani away from Bryce, which is why he's gets so mad when she's around Bryce, when he saw her kissing Bryce, when, she admitted, or when he found out that she and Bryce had sex, which is one of the reasons Ani was like, "You can let me walk off here. You don't have to drive me up there." He's like, "Whoa, wait, you live with Bryce? Stay away from him. He's a monster, right?" Remember that? So I honestly do think that Clay was trying to, in his mind, protect Ani because he was kind of treating her like another Hannah. "Oh, I wasn't there to protect Hannah, so now I have to be here to protect Ani. And I actually like Ani, care for Ani, and really want to be with Ani and date her." So I feel like in some cases he's probably making up for the time he lost or couldn't have with Hannah. I also believe that Ani and Clay's disagreement with each other about Bryce is pretty much like the two sides of the audience. One side is kind of, sympathizing with Bryce and seeing the more humanizing side of him. And then the other audience is like, "Nope, he's still a monster. Nope, he's a bad person. Stay away from him. He's wrong." I really feel like that is really the audience going at each other and, having a disagreement with each other when it comes to Bryce, because you do have people with mixed feelings. Okay, I actually do want to talk about Zach. And Zach's character, Zach is still a nice guy. Zach is, just trying to be him. Zach is injured because we saw how Bryce ran into Zach's leg on the football field and ruined his leg, which ruined his potential football future and football career. And I honestly felt bad for Zach, and I personally don't understand, well, I do understand where the beef between Zach and Bryce comes from, and they literally went to blows. At first, I thought that the plot twist was Zach killed Bryce. And I'm like, maybe Zach did kill Bryce. Because I said it was going to be one person. For the longest time throughout the whole season, I'm like, it's definitely this person. Or for the sake of plot twist, it could be this person. But when Zach gave his, testimony and confession, he said that he killed Bryce because he thought he beat him so bad that he died. Turns out he didn't do it. But then again, I personally feel like maybe for the sake of plot twist, it could have been Zach. And I'm so glad it wasn't, because Zach is such a nice guy. Zach has been a nice guy since day one. And I feel like he struggles to be that nice guy sometimes, because especially when he admitted to dating Hannah over the summer, or when he was that nice guy in season 1, is because he hangs out with so many jocks and the whole hyper masculinity thing and what it means to be masculine, especially as a jock. It's like, you can't be the nice, soft, sweet, sensitive guy. He always has to like prove his manhood in some way again. And we see that a lot with boys, with men, and trust me, in communities of color, we see this. It's projection of what manhood is or what it's supposed to be. You know, you get called soft for being a nice, sweet, sensitive guy, and personally I don't have a problem with that. Don't act soft, but there's nothing wrong with being a nice guy. And I feel like the culture surrounding jock culture, frat life, you know, whatever men or boys are a part of, this false promotion and projection of what being a man is, it's kind of killing our culture, and it's been doing that for a while. But yes, Zach has always been the nice guy, always been the sweetest guy. I hope he stays that way for the rest of this series. I want him to go out a winner. I love him so much. And Ross Butler, so attractive. He was being there for Chloe. I kind of don't know what relationship that could have been, honestly, but I like that he tries to be there for her, because it is Bryce's rape baby. And, you know, maybe not so much rape baby, because they did have consensual sex at one point, but there were times where they didn't. But it was Bryce's baby nonetheless. And, you know, Chloe gets an abortion because, you know, she has to come to the realization that she's having a baby by someone who raped her, whether they were dating or not. And the fact that she kind of, you know, recanted her testimony, instead of ratting Bryce out, she caped for him. One, it kind of goes to show the conflicting, what goes on conflictingly in a mind of a victim, you know, especially if that victim happens to be your significant other. So to her, you know, she's also trying to protect the life of her baby, which in hindsight kind of looks like you not ratting him out is a waste of time, because you still aborted the baby. And then part of me is like, because Bryce is dead, I really wish she now didn't abort the baby, because then Bryce's mom would have had a remnant of Bryce through that baby. So that kind of sucks for his mom. But I do think that, you know, her getting rid of the baby, maybe she felt like it was the right decision. And, you know, how it's a tough decision. Women who get abortions for whatever reason, they don't necessarily go and get the abortion because they're just going in with confidence. I would say a good 9 times out of 10, it's a stressful, frustrating, and sad process. We saw, you know, Chloe get rid of her baby, but she's getting rid of a baby possibly created through rape. And this is what I don't like with the people, especially those people outside giving her fetuses and stuff. I honestly do not like these people who shame people for getting abortions. You don't know what the circumstances are. Now I want to talk about the character who I believe we were paying attention the most to outside of Bryce, and that's Tyler. Oh my gosh, Tyler. The last episode of season 2 left us all traumatized, and that left me so traumatized, especially with the almost school shooting. I was like, are you really gonna leave us on this note, this much of a cliffhanger? You're going to leave us like this? This was too much. You were going to leave us like this and have us waiting a whole another set of months or all the way next year for a season 3, because we knew there was going to be a season 3. But personally, I think the whole who killed Bryce thing was a jump the shark as well. But still, I think the main reason, even Watch Mojo or Miss Mojo mentioned this, the main question everybody wants answered is, will Monty pay for what he did to Tyler? Is that going to happen? That's like the number one thing. And of course, the number one thing of the most heartbreaking moments of season 2 was Tyler's assault in that bathroom. And like, even talking about it was, you know, watching it was hard enough. It was so unexpected. I remember watching that episode, and at the beginning they say, warning, this show or this episode contains like graphic content, including like sexual assaults. And I'm like, okay, we already discussed this. I know this. But that scene happened, and I was like, I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that. I think there's a channel called It's So Real. I correct me if I'm wrong, but they like do TV and movie reviews. And even the man said it. He's never seen a show. He's watched a lot of shows and he's never seen a show where they took it that far. And it's like only on Netflix, only on episodes like Stars where you have to pay. Only then. So it's crazy, crazy, crazy. But anyway, yes, I am so happy to see Tyler's growth. And the last episode where he was taking pictures and photos of his friends and he's like, having friends is a beautiful thing. And with all that he's been through and all that oh my gosh, I can't. He was so right to say that having friends is a beautiful thing. And, you know, just having people in your corner who support you, especially through times like that, is a beautiful thing. And when Jessica had the group and he joined the group, and he stood up and said, hey, my name is Tyler Down and I'm a survivor. And honestly, I think it's so beautiful because we don't really talk about sexual assault amongst boys, amongst men. I think we're just getting into more talking about it. But a lot of times we really do watch out for the women, which we should, of course. But sometimes we never know that it's happening to men. And this is the thing about like masculinity and like what it means to be a man. Repression is not being strong. I'm so sick of men and women thinking that repressing your hurt feelings makes you strong and talking about that makes you weak. I'm tired of that. But I understand how hard it was, how hard it can be for someone, especially a guy, to admit something like that. And honestly, when he talked to Clay about it, that was one of the most hardest scenes to watch. And mind you, I actually saw that episode at night. So imagine. So that was a very hard part to watch in that episode. It happened episode 8. And he not only told Clay about it, he explained it in detail. And for those of us who actually saw the scene happening, and I mentioned this in a comment section somewhere, it's as if when Tyler is explaining in detail what happened to him, not only does he relive that, but it's like we are reliving it and watching it in our heads and in our minds over and over again because we saw what happened, but to hear him explain it again is very tough to watch or tough to listen to. And honestly, I think Clay was the perfect person for Tyler to literally tell this story of what happened to him. He told Jessica and Bryce, but he showed them a video of his suicide video, well, almost suicide video, before he goes to almost shoot up the school. He was about to go straight Columbine on that school. I'm like, damn. And he was very angry at that. But then in the season 3, he was very timid, he was shy, he was shocked, and you can tell he's traumatized and he's suffering a lot of PTSD because Clay noticed saying that, hey, why don't you use the bathroom? Or I noticed you don't want to touch anyone and you're not using the bathroom, you're not going to the bathroom. And then he explains it. I'm like, oh yeah, PTSD, he's traumatized. Honestly, I feel like one of the best parts of that scene was when Clay asked for consent to hug Tyler. He said, I feel like I want to hug you right now. Will that be all right if I hug you? And then Tyler said, yeah, you can hug me. Because I feel like Tyler was timid about being touched, but he desperately needed a hug right now. He needed someone and he started crying. And I was like, that hit me. That really hit me. But I think Clay was the perfect person to literally talk to. Someone in the comments section wrote, Clay is literally holding this school together. He's holding this whole school together. And I agree 100%. He's literally the glue that's holding everyone together. I'm sorry. Disagree if you want, but I feel like he is. And this goes to show that Tyler knows Clay is pretty much can be trusted with something like that. And Clay is really the perfect person to talk about that because Clay was like, hey, you know I care about you. At this point, you can tell me anything. So now I want to talk about Bryce. Now, this season has really taken people's negative emotions towards Bryce and kind of flipped them. Just like Ani was able to find a humanizing side to Bryce, us as the audience, we're able to find a humanizing side to Bryce. So he has definitely been more humanized in this season. We have found a level of sympathy towards him. You're able to see him outside of the role we previously saw because he was cocky AF in that courtroom in season 2, basically saying, oh no, Hannah wanted it, Hannah this, Hannah that, she basically trying to tell everyone that no, the girl wanted to be sexually assaulted, or in his words, she wanted to have sex with him. The typical excuses that, guys use. Oh, well, she wanted it. Look at the way she was dressed, or look at how she was acting. She was asking for it, blah, 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 blah. But in season 3, we're seeing him being a lot more remorseful. We're seeing him really trying to right his wrongs here. And honestly, I feel like this is one of the things where people said there are two sides to every story. There's two sides to the same person. We see him as a monster in season 1 and a monster in season 2. We see all of that. But in season 3, we see him really trying to rectify his wrongs and really trying to show that he's a changed person. When he makes the tape for Jessica and says, hey, I admit it. I assaulted you. I raped you. I did all that to you. And that's because I wanted to do it. I was a terrible person. I'm admitting now, and I'm not making this tape because I'm trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm literally getting it all out there. He tries to help Justin pay off his debt. He tries to help Tyler when Tyler tells him about what Monty did. He tries to help Tyler by confronting Monty and saying, you don't go near him, you don't talk to him, you don't look in his direction, or else I will expose you for everything. I'm like, wow, Bryce is literally... Bryce? Bryce is doing this? Bryce? Okay. I see people in the comments section talking about how, look, I don't like Bryce, but I'm going to give him his props on this one. I'm going to stand Bryce for this one. I'm going to stand Bryce just this once. Like I'm saying, Bryce, you're turning over a new leaf? Yes! It also goes to show that people who we believe are monsters can be redeemable, okay? Not everyone can be redeemable, but Bryce is showing us that he can be redeemable, and he was literally trying. So now you have people saying, okay, now I don't really want him dead because he was actually trying. When Bryce listens to the tapes and he asks, when's my tape coming up? Is my tape coming up anytime soon? And Tony's like, 2 things. 1, your tape is coming up. And 2, they're all your tapes. And that was like, that really hit me because it's like, yeah, this all leads up to you. You all play a part in this. So Bryce honestly really had a lot of redeeming qualities this season that kind of make his death very tragic. And honestly, it really shocked me who actually did it. Now, Alex. Okay, so here is the biggest plot twist I've seen this season, possibly this whole series. And that is Alex being the one who killed Bryce. I honestly know that either someone in the gang would have had, some motive to kill Bryce, but for some reason, it never dawned on me that it was Alex. Maybe because I didn't pay attention to him too much this season, and, it never really crossed me. I will admit that I really thought it was somebody else. If it wasn't somebody else, I would say maybe it's Ani, because, the narrator, the one you're kind of not expecting, least expecting, the one who's been closer to Bryce more than anybody so far, especially who's been in his house, then, I would think that it would be at least her if it's not who I thought it was. But then again, I was wrong in this sense. And they definitely not only found out or knew it was Alex, because, Jessica was there and wanted to leave Bryce and said, let's go. Alex had a change of heart and wanted to help Bryce, but Bryce had to open his mouth and said, I'm going to destroy Zach's life. And Alex is like, you're not hurting Zach. Zach has been there for me. I care about Zach. I care about a lot of people in the gang. I care about everyone. And he just snapped in a fit of blind rage and threw Bryce over the pier and into the water. So technically, by him doing that, because Bryce was already, weak and, his leg broke and he couldn't move and, he's just defeated. He said, come on, help me get to a hospital or somewhere because it's cold outside. I could freeze to death. And, Alex had to do it. And then Bryce talked about ruining Zach's life. And then Alex snapped and threw him overboard. Now, I understand the whole, not crime of passion thing, but I understand how a fit of blind rage can make you do something you regret. And of course, here they tried to blame it all on Monty. And yeah, I will be honest. I really thought and really wanted it to be Monty who killed Bryce, because a lot of signs throughout this season were pointing to yes. Because the way he was nonchalantly just acting like he didn't care that Bryce was dead, but looking back at it in hindsight, it's probably just his way of grieving or showing emotion. Monty's way of grieving is either apathetic or it's with anger and rage, because we saw all of that, what he did to Tyler, and it came out of nowhere. And wasn't he juicing too? He was on steroids too. So, you know, that could also be a fit of roid rage happening there. But yes, I personally thought and kind of wanted it to be Monty, because I felt like, you know what, not only does he get to go to jail for Tyler, he gets to go to jail for Bryce. Ha ha. I really wanted it to be Monty. But, you know, it was Alex, and they tried to pin it on Monty because, you know, easy target. One, not only does it clear Alex's name, and the sheriff, from what people are saying and what I've come to believe, I believe that the sheriff, who was Alex's dad, or the deputy who was Alex's dad, does not want to throw his son in jail. So he said, hey, Monty died in prison, and, you know, they can't do nothing. And he just went along with the fact that they thought Monty did it. You know, so pin it on Monty because it clears Alex's name, and we get back at Monty for what he did to Tyler. And, you know, he's just a bad guy in general, so let's pin it on him. Now, last but not least, Monty, Montgomery de la Cruz. All right. So when I was first introduced to him in season 2, honestly, I thought the guy was attractive. Like the guy, Timothy Granaderos, who plays Monty, damn, he fine. I'm not gonna lie. And I really wanted to like him so bad, but then he became a dick. He became an a-hole, and I'm like, no, I can't like you anymore. Like, I don't care how good looking you are. I'm not doing it. I'm not. And after that, I'm just like, you need to pay for what you did. Okay, you need to pay for what you did. And I really wanted him to be the killer because, again, all signs were just constantly pointing to yes. You know, the fact that Bryce was threatening him about exposing him if he, you know, went near Tyler or hurt Tyler at all. And, you know, maybe he took that and said, I need to keep his mouth shut, so I have to get rid of him. So I'm thinking a lot of signs are pointing to yes. So I thought for a fact it was Monty. I was so hurt to be proven wrong a little bit, but it was Alex, and they decided to frame Monty. And now I kind of see how this all connects. I remember the scene in the locker room where Bryce was threatening Monty and basically telling him what you did to Tyler was rape/sodomy, but what you did to Tyler was sexual assault. And Monty made a great point when he said, you're really going to sit here or stand here and tell me what rape is, you of all people, for what you did to dozens of girls. And it's true. This is literally like the pot calling the kettle black, but it doesn't make what Bryce or Monty said any less true. Okay, what Monty did was wrong. What Bryce did was wrong. The whole other thing was Monty, I feel like, has a tough time showing his emotions or being vulnerable with people. And I suspected after what he did to Tyler, because it was so extreme, I'm like, there has to be a situation or something that caused him to be like this. Because when Jessica confronts him, he's like, why are you so cruel? Why are you so cruel? Why are you so mean to people? He's like, I'm not cruel. No, there's something seriously so effed up about you, and I really want to know what it is. I really wish you'd tell me what it is. He's like, I had a rough childhood. And I suspected that. I'm like, clearly you had a rough childhood. I'm going to go with you had an abusive, alcoholic father who probably beats you a lot, because we saw him with the cast in his arm. We saw Bryce say, hey, he's effed up. You know, he gets like beat at home and everything. And I'm like, I know for a fact this had to come from some rough home life. We see it. People who are angry and aggressive and who bully people, they probably are abused at home, especially by drug addicted, maybe alcoholic parents or neglectful parents. There's something going on. I knew there had to be some correlation. I knew there had to be some reasoning to this. You know, I don't think he just wakes up and, you know, does this, because it's possible to see that, but very rare. I know there has to be something going on. And let's just talk about Monty's sexuality for a minute. Look, honestly, I was not surprised to find out that Monty was into guys, or that he was possibly gay or bi, or he, you know, just liked guys. I was not surprised at all. At all. I was not surprised, okay? I said there has to be something to this. Something told me he's probably one of those jocks or one of those guys, those muscle-headed guys who tries to exert a an overwhelmingly amount of masculinity to try to prove his manhood. So he basically, goes off calling people the F word out of nowhere. He called Tyler the F word out of nowhere. Like, what does that have to do with anything? He just has a lot of blind rage in him and goes off on people calling them the F word and stuff. Like, right after Winston gives him head at that party, and, Winston just simply says, we should hang out sometime. It was nice meeting you. And Monty goes out of nowhere saying, what the you just say to me, F word, and punches him in the face. So you can tell Monty likes guys, and, he has a tough time being open and honest about his sexuality. And we see that. Look, they definitely played into the whole gay, closeted, angry jock trope and stereotype. They really played into that. But even though it's cliche, because we saw this with Riley and Degrassi, even though it's cliche, it's still common. A lot of stuff, especially when it comes to LGBTQ representation or LGBTQ type storylines in media, people say, oh, this is so overdone and so overused, which I agree with, but that doesn't mean it's still not happening. This show takes from what is really happening and puts it in the show. You guys think people are just romanticizing this stuff, but no, it really does happen. I had a feeling Monty was gay, and I'm cool with it. But I honestly feel, unlike Tony, who can be open about his sexuality and comfortable about his sexuality because, he has friends and people who accept him and who don't judge, especially his family, which is funny. And aren't they two, like, Latino families? They're like two Latino families. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of goes to show, like, here's one side of the community that is accepting, that is tolerant, that is respectful, that loves you no matter what. And here's the other side that treats you like total crap because, of your sexuality. And they feel like you being LGBTQ identifying, especially as a man, takes away from your perceived manhood or masculinity, which really needs to stop. But we saw how Monty struggles with his sexuality, especially because of his father who abuses him. And, we saw how his father spit in his face when Monty was like, yeah, sure, I'm gay. What of it? I'm here, I'm queer, get used to me. And the father literally spit in his face. And that was kind of heartbreaking to watch. So we figured out that Monty is one of those people with sexuality struggles, like a lot of people have. So this is a relatable storyline. Now, I have covered all the characters. I am going to get into the show, okay? Please bear with me here. I know this video is very long. So in the case of Monty and Winston, I see a lot of people in the comment section really trying to humanize Monty before they really get an in-depth view of Monty. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I really wish Monty didn't die. I can't believe they killed him off like that. I want to see him and Winston together. I want to see them together. Oh, Monty was a human being. He didn't deserve to go down like that. He didn't deserve to die. He didn't deserve to have the murder pinned on him for something he didn't do. And I'm saying, look, I don't necessarily think it's right to pin something like that on somebody else who didn't do the crime, okay? It's not fair, but at the same time, I am not humanizing Monty because he's a guy with child abuse and sexuality issues. Like, until we get to see him try to rectify and redeem himself, like in season 4, which I hope they do, because habeas corpus, we did not see the body. They just told us, the deputy just told us he died, but we didn't see the body, so habeas corpus. Until then, I am not humanizing Monty or sympathizing Monty because I don't think a lot of people overwhelmingly had that same sympathy for Bryce or even Ani. You guys did not have that level of sympathy for them. I feel like one of the main reasons people are caping for Monty is because he's struggling with his sexuality and he's gay. I feel like that is. And I'm telling you this as someone who likes both genders. I am not trying to just cape for someone just because of that. You know what I'm saying? I feel like Monty needs to bring more to the table. Just like you guys didn't forgive Bryce until you saw him really trying to rectify and redeem himself. Just like you guys waited to humanize Bryce, I'm waiting till season 4 to humanize Monty. I am not doing that. Okay, pinning the murder on him was wrong. Hopefully he's not dead so we could see how this plays out. What his father did to him was wrong. We get to see his home life and why he acts the way he does, and we understand it now. But I'm more understanding of Monty and why he acts the way he does, but I'm not caping for him or humanizing him. I see people in the comment section saying, no, bring Monty back. She shouldn't have died. He didn't deserve death. Oh my God. And like, I'm just like, no. We're not doing that yet. We are not humanizing him yet. Conspiracy theory time. We saw Justin pay some guy and said, I need a favor. And then we saw some guy talking to his lawyer, talking about he's not going to get a felony charge for some steroids. And maybe that was the guy that Justin paid to get into Monty's cell to get arrested and killed Monty, because they had this plan. Like, the gang knew Monty was dead, or they knew Monty was in trouble, you know, before they came with the testimony that it was Monty who did it. So I think Justin, conspiracy theory time, I think Justin paid some guy, that same guy he said, I need a favor for. I think he paid that guy to go in there and kill Monty. Now, I also want to talk about, like, Justin's funeral service, how they say, mourn the victim, not the rapist. You clearly see this with a lot of extremist feminism that gives the movement such a bad look. As a woman, I would not like to see someone showing sympathy or mourning towards someone who's caused so many problems. I would not like seeing that. I would probably be on their side saying, yes, why are we showing all this love towards someone who did so much damage? You know what I'm saying? I guarantee victims of people who are serial killers or their families are like, no, we don't like this person. We should not humanize this person. We should not, you know, sympathize with this person. We shouldn't be nice. Okay, and I understand where they were coming from. However, I feel like their protest was too intense, you know? And that girl, Casey, oh my God, Casey Ford, that girl is basically an example, if not the epitome of everything wrong with feminism and extremist feminism. Why people don't take feminist social justice warriors too seriously. And Jessica was right. Jessica was basically me, and Casey was pretty much like a lot of other progressive movements that are so aggressive to try to be progressive that they make things worse. Like, Jessica was right. You're not making change. You're just making noise. And eventually, people will just cancel you out. And this is the same thing I said with movements like, you know, this whole pro-black, black liberation, black empowerment movement. Some of you guys, some of the way you guys go at it, and there's this one girl on Instagram that I know that is terrible, that is the worst at this. She's notorious for this. And that's why I backed up off of her. A lot of you guys in these so-called movements, you're so extremist, and I understand you just want your change to happen. I'm here for it. But some of you guys are so extremist with your stuff, you don't get work done. You just let people attack you back by saying you're just nothing but a bunch of social justice warriors. And look, I know for a fact that the social justice warriors of the world really mean well, but their delivery on how to do things comes off very annoying. It doesn't come off as organized and strategic. It really just comes off, like Jessica said, you're just making noise. And eventually, yes, you can make enough noise and people will hear you, but then you will make enough noise and people will just want to cancel you out. And this is kind of what happened with Casey. Like, and I feel like she has let her anger from her experience take over her judgment and her mind. It's clouded her judgment. And this is what I said, especially with all these types of so-called progressive liberal movements, your aggression for progression is actually holding you back. And look, I don't think we should be too soft with these types of movements. I don't think we should play quote unquote respectability politics too much with this movement. But at the same time, eventually your extremism is not going to do you any good. It's going to hold you back more than it does you any good. So I personally did not like Casey. Of course, she apologized to Tyler, and you know, she was kind of selfish with it. She was like, she told Tyler, what do you know about being a rape victim? You will never experience it. I'm like, girl, he knows more than you think. He knows more than you think, trust me. And I feel like she's one of those feminists, you know, and she has the typical look of those extremist feminists, you know, shaving off half her hair cut short, hair maybe colored, you know, they look more like boys, they have septum piercings, you know, they kind of don't know how to dress. Like you see this a lot with some of them. There's nothing wrong with being a feminist or a womanist in my case, or fighting for women's rights, or speaking out against rape culture, or making a protest, or taking a stand, and you know, getting people to wake up, and sometimes in a bizarre way. But there are ways to do it, and some of your extremist ways are not working. So that was my thing on that. I really could not stand her. But, you know, those are my things about the show. I do hope in season 4 we get to see, you know, Monty. Hopefully Monty's still alive and he and Winston can, you know, they have flashbacks of what they did before his arrest and stuff like that. I'm here for Monty's storyline. You know, I believe, you know, maybe he and Winston do have like a relationship going on. You know, I'm here for that. But at the same time, you know, I'm not going to humanize Monty just yet. Just not yet. Just not yet. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I know this video was very long, but when I go in depth to something, I want to get it all out. So hopefully you guys stuck around long enough to hear my thoughts, hear my review on it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification button, and you can actually select on what kinds of videos you want to be notified on. You know, tell me your thoughts if you've seen the series, if you've seen the episodes. Tell me your thoughts on this. What were your thoughts on each character? Who was your favorite this month? Who did you think was the killer before you were proven wrong, if you were proven wrong, okay? Thank you so much again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!